So welcome everybody. I'm very pleased now for our last discussion at the Vintage Computer Festival. If you've seen, we had already a similar discussion a year ago with other topics, but I think it belongs a little bit to the tradition of the Vintage Computer Festival to not just discuss about the computers outside, but also discuss about what it means to collect computer history. Now, I'm very pleased to have this panel with the different persons, and I'm really looking forward to vibrant discussions with different opinions, hopefully, on different elements inside it. Now, let me first start and introduce you quickly by name, so everybody knows the name, and then everybody will make a short introduction in their own topic and what they're going on. So I start now, actually, it ordered almost perfectly with Stéphane, that's Stéphane Pitteloud from the Old Computer Consoles Club. Which will shortly, briefly introduce then the Old Computer Consoles Club. Then next to him is Gleb. He's assistant professor at the University of Lucerne, and he's also doing God papers. That's also a topic he will discuss about, the project where he collects what you will hear about, some stories around collecting computers. Then there is Dominik Landwehr, who already had a talk on Enigma today, but here is now in the role as for the museum Enter Technikwelt, which will open on the 1st of December in Solothurn, Derendingen, I think, where you actually can visit many also computers in a museum, one of the biggest one in Technikwelt. Then there is Stefania Calcagno from ESoCop, from the European Society for Computer Preservation. He has also all the stuff downstairs. By the way, OCCC also, they're all here actually, interestingly. We collected them here with all their computers in there. And finally, Cédric Gaudin from the Musée Bolo, where you have the famous Smaki computer. And today, I think also Daniel Nico is here, who developed it once. Okay. So now what we do first is really a brief introduction round about the different stories and museums we have here, and then we're going to start with the discussion. I hand over to Stéphane as the first one, and I'm going to open quickly his presentation. And he's going to show us and tell us the story.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Stéphane from the OCCC. I speak French, but I will try to speak a little bit English with you today. I hope you can understand me. I'm the president of the OCCC. What is the OCCC? This is an association that is based in Valais, in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. And this association was born out of the observation that our machines, our collectors' machines, were neither used or visible to the public. We met us and we told us, well, we have many machines, but we never use them. We never display them. Therefore, our goal was to make it visible to the public. In our association, we have about 20 enthusiasts that collect many different things, computer consoles. What we do is to organize one meeting per month in Martigny. We have a room where we can store some materials, make some exhibition, make some reparation on it. It's a very good time that we spend together. And our main goal is to make a major exhibition every year. This is something like we see here today, but a little bit smaller. We call it the OCCF for All Computers and Console Festival. And this is always the first weekend of June in Martigny. So feel free to come visit us. Our association is a little bit special because each member owns his own collection. We have about 350 computers and more than 200 consoles together. And we have 3 separated rooms where we put our material to make it safe. So it's a room where there is no humidity, no daylight, and with same temperature the same year. All machines that we have listed on your list are restored, installed, and functional. So we are not speaking about something that we store everywhere, that we never turn it on or try at them. We are really speaking for computer that we are actually able to present. We try to have every iconic software available on modern media to be able to demonstrate those computers. And we try to have available documentation too for them. what we do concretely, we do restoration of machines. We try to make it as close to the original as possible. So here you see as example the Sol 20 case that you can see on my booth. I have made it painted with the real color. With a spectrograph, we took the real color to have really the same results as the original. We do original media copy to replace them with modern solutions like SD card, compact flash card, to avoid wear on the real media, to store them, and to facilitate software loading too, to be able to load software instantly and more conveniently. We want to provide the most important software on the machine to deliver a complete experience. That means when we expose a machine, the people have to see and feel what this machine actually was to be used. We want to display the machine and make them available to the public. That's clear, that's our main goal. We want to back up the data on modern media to preserve them. We are in the way to create some documented cloud-native base that will be available to everyone. And we are trying to involve young enthusiasts in the various stages of restoration to transmit the knowledge to new people, as you can see on some picture later. Here an example of your work, what we do with the SMACI 6. First step, we recreated some diskettes from the SMACI 6 because we have many diskettes available, but almost all of them had a read error. So we have to put the data on the real diskettes that was actually good to read. Then we restored the SMACI 6 itself. For example, you see here one young member that is restoring the keyboard with some soldering. We just achieved a complete emulation of the Micropolis floppy drive. This is a special floppy drive that uses hard sector head floppies, therefore very hard to have. And that means that we have now a digitalization of our 90 floppy disks that are possible to run directly on this emulator. That means you can just plug the emulator on the SMACI 6 and run the software directly without having to relying on old and unreliable medias. That means we have now together all 6 SMACI 6 that are in working state and usable to display. The final one, some other examples from what we do. We make sometimes themed exhibition. Here the SMACI exposition exhibit that we do 1 year ago in Martigny. We support some schools projects, like you can see here on the pictures. When children want to present specific in the school, then we help them and provide the knowledge and the computer to help them to present this. And of course, we participate in other events like we do today here at the VCF. And that is.
Thanks a lot. So you have a first glimpse of the OCCC Computer Consoles Club. Now I hand over to Gleb, Albert, with his Got Papers in a way. Tell us, what are you collecting and what's your initiative?
Hi, my name is Gleb Albert. I am assistant professor at the University of Lucerne. I used to be at the University of Zurich for a long while actually. I'm a historian specialized in, on the one hand, Eastern European history, on the other hand, the history of home computing. And why I'm sitting here today is because of this small initiative of mine, which is running since 2015 and has set its goal to digitize and preserve, well, mostly paper artifacts of computer subcultures. Maybe a few words why I basically had to start this initiative. My habilitation project, which I did at the University of Zurich and which is still in its final stages, is about, well, a phenomenon that's known by several names, such as, I don't know, cracking scene, crackers, the scene, basically. What in the end led to what we know nowadays as demo scene, but what started with teenagers, mostly male teenagers, competing in who breaks copy protection of the latest game first and spreads it with a intro as fancy as possible and gains fame in the home computer world. Well, when I started to research this youth subculture, I quickly realized that you cannot explore this subculture just by the digital artifacts alone, because this is like the facade, the outside of this culture, while all the internal communication, at least until the early 90s, happened through analog means. It happened through telephone conferences, through letters mostly. so-called snail mail or disk swapping and so on. So you could not write a history of this culture without having access to this kind of historical sources. And at first I didn't even dare to believe that these sources still exist. I mean, I saw a few like paper magazines, a few paper flyers, invitations to copy parties, but I had no idea that there are still like dozens of veterans who still have their paper correspondence in boxes in their basements. So I had a treasure trove to work with as a historian, but of course the problem is if you're a historian you have to make everything transparent. Like if you quote something, of course your reader needs to know where can I look it up to, you know, to see whether this particular historian is interpreting the source correctly or not. So basically in the end I had to do some sort of preservation project to make my research transparent. So in 2015 I launched this. Got Papers, which was like a call to veterans and still active seniors to provide me with their analog artifacts of their digital subculture. And basically this is the front end, this is just the blog where I post the newest editions, and the high quality scans themselves together with some metadata are preserved on an FTP server called Scene.org, which is like the most important demo scene file preservation server, but which is hosted by the University of Rotterdam. So there is some long-term preservation connected to this. So it's not just some random website that will go offline in 10 years or so, at least. I hope not. And so just to show you what I'm actually talking about, what sort of papers, I just printed out some of the artifacts and I will just pass them around. Like these are not the originals, so don't worry, you can, like, there's nothing valuable about these particular papers, you can even keep them if you want. So just to give you a quick impression what this is. I mean, why it is so important to preserve the paper and analogous artifacts of computer cultures, I think this is maybe something I can say a few words in one of our next like thematic question rounds. So I will just stop at this point. Yeah, you can see the URL there, gotpapers.scene.org if you're interested. And yeah, that's it for now.
Thanks, Gleb. So I would hand over to Dominik Landwehr, who's talking for the Enter Technikwelt, which is opening the 1st of December. So maybe we see each other there at the opening or somewhere in between. So Dominik, let's tell us.
Okay. I did myself a research, a PhD in the scene of the cryptographic collectors, and I published a PhD thesis in 2007, and ever since I stayed in touch with the people collecting technical artifacts, and so I got very close involved up to an extent with the Enter Museum, which initially was just a huge personal collection. When they opened 15 years ago at the main station of Solothurn, a shop that looked a little bit like a technical antique shop and a museum, they got more and more approached by collectors who were just more than happy then to dump their entire collections at the house of Felix Kunz and the museum. And so they went on collecting. Nowadays they have over 30,000 objects, but they do not just collect computer history, they also collect broadcasting, television, entertainment, hi-fi, and last but not least, for some reasons of personal hobby, film cars from past 50 or 60 years. So when they had to leave the building, which they initially bought from the Swiss Train Association, they got so much money that they could actually start to build a new museum, and this new museum will open up by the end of this month. And now the new museum is much more than just a collection, but it should be a real museum, combined with a sort what we call Schaulager, a public available accessible depot, which certainly will be very interesting. But for me, in my personal assessment, the most interesting thing is very similar to what you have told in the beginning, is to be a hub for collectors and a hub for people involved. So there is a group there who is doing, they're running an analogous television studio, or they repair arcade games and so on. So it's a sort of a extending network, and they have very sophisticated atelier workshop with extremely sophisticated instrument, excluding X-ray machines to analyze the material which they have received, and they will over time become a sort of a competence center for restoration of old technology. They're not afraid to get things running again because they know they have every item several times, and they have a collection of 2 million spare parts and 50,000 electronic bulbs. So it's a big thing. How it will develop and what eventually is going to be, in the end it's a private museum, and I think they will very much respond to what they experience, and I'm looking forward to see that growing.
So now I hand over to Stefania for the European Society for Computer Preservation.
Hello everybody. I'm the president of the European Society for Computer Preservation. It was created in 2015 from a bunch of passionates from several countries: Switzerland, Italy, Germany, and right now we are about 100 people involved, more or less. We maintain and preserve 655 different computer models. We have about 4,000 ordinate computers. And why we are there? Because we have 3 goals. We like to feed the community with documentation and everything which shall be used to maintain functional and active old computers. We restore our computers and try to let them work in the exhibitions like this, because every time we go, every time we make something, we show computers, we simply light up a computer, 40 or 50 years old. Sometimes it bars. It's normal. So it's difficult, and it's continuous restore job every day, every time. We have to restore a lot of computers. And the third goal we have is to let the young generation knows about how we come from a huge computer like this room making 2 + 2 in 5 minutes to have anything ever done by the human species on our hand in a smartphone. Okay, the road from the huge computer to the small one. Every computer has the same philosophy from the beginning up to now, but there is an history which shows how we lost the knowledge of what is inside the computer is. Okay, we had it, we don't have anymore, and we would like to let all the new generations know about that.
Thanks a lot. So now for the final one, Musée Bolo in Lausanne. I hand you over, Cédric, about your museum. I switch it to English so people can read.
Yes, okay. So I am Cédric Gaudin, president of the Association of les Amis du Musée Bolo, and also president of the foundation Mémoire Informatique. The Musée Bolo is a museum. We are located at, our exhibition are located at EPFL. We have a small exhibition place. It's 300 meters square, so it's not so big, but the collection is quite big. We have nearly 1,000 square meters of equipment, computer equipment. We focused mainly on computers, so we collect computers only. So we have computers like Cray supercomputers that are quite complicated to move. If you want to make them run again, it's really, really complicated. We have also a lot of microcomputers in the collection. And we have a lot of SMACI computers also. So today we have a project this is day to preserve all the history of SMACI computers and all the history around the SMACI, because there is also the Scribe, the Dauphin computers, the Crocus. There is different computers made by Professor Nikou and his team, and we want to preserve all this history and to show to the people all what has been made in Switzerland, because in Switzerland we made a lot of things. There is professor like Jean-Daniel Nikou, but also Professor Wirth that did Lilith computer and used the first usable mouse was one of the first usable mouse was made in Switzerland, and this mouse was born in the laboratory of Professor Nikou and then was sold by Logitech. So this is some of the success of all this history, but this is only a small part of this history. And there is all the rest of this history that is quite interesting. So we try to preserve this day. So we have a project for preserving history of SMACIs, and it will start next year.
Yeah, just to remind you, you can watch really the SMACIs downstairs, and it's really a special element that brings us to the first question. Like, if you look at what people collect, we see many people collecting computers. We have often less an issue in getting Macintosh, for example, or other computers, but we have more issue in other computers. And there's my question for you. How do you select objects your collection? Why? And what do you don't collect as a collection? So what would you say, I don't collect it at all because it's everywhere, and what do you say, I collect it? So how do you select what you collect? Who wants to start?
Okay. So at Musée Bolo, the collection started as a private collection, as the same as Hunter or other people. And with the time, it becomes so bigger that we decided to create a museum and to show the SS computers sometimes working alive, because it's more interesting when you have the software doing something with the real hardware. It helps also people that is doing emulators to see how the machines react, the different revision also of the computers and so on. So at the beginning we collected a lot. It was a bit unorganized collection because it's private collections. So depending on the feeling of the collector and his interest and so on, and now more and more we are a strategy how to collect things, what we want to collect, what we don't want to collect. So we focus on Swiss computer because we are in Switzerland and nobody will talk about Swiss computer except Swiss people, simply. If you ask American to talk about Swiss computer, they will say, oh, this is a SMACI, and that's it. So you have not the history that goes with this computer. And also computers that have made the history in Switzerland, like Cray1. The Cray1 we have in the exhibition is the first of Switzerland and also the first of France. So this is a historical piece of computer, and this is the two acts we have, and then we have all other computers depending on the state, on the amount of unit we have in the collection. If we have 10 computers, maybe we'll say no and redirect some donors to other people that can take care of their computer. And if we have only 3, we'll say, okay, we'll accept. So there is a decision that is taken based on if it's Swiss, if it's rare, if it's we already have in the collection. So it's it's a strategy how to collect now.
Okay, well, it's difficult to say there's a strategy to collect or not, because many of our machines comes from donations. So it's not our choice, it's something else. What we try to collect, what we try to preserve is computers that made history, that changed something. It was before and after, okay? Like Amiga 1000, like Apple I, like Altair 8800. And there was before it was in a way, after it was in another way. But also computer that completely failed, because we can learn from failures, like Osborne 1, the Osborne effect. They said they have Osborne 2, before it was ready. And people didn't buy anymore Osborne 1 and Osborne did say greetings, hello, and bye-bye, no? That's studied also in university as an effect of marketing effect, wrong. So also failures can teach something. CDTV from Commodore. It was completely wrong in time when it appeared on the market. It was too early. And too early didn't sold. And Commodore had great problems because they didn't sold 1 million pieces they thought to sell. So it's difficult to say something that made the history in a good way or in a bad way. In any case, it's something that made history, I think.
It's very interesting to listen to you because my feeling is that there are many similarities. In the case of Ender, this was initially the private collection of the founder, who is an entrepreneur, Felix Kunz, who just basically didn't want to throw away his old Apple computers and his old machines, and he just collected them. And 15 years ago, he opened a museum, a little museum, which was still a little bit disorganized. And all of a sudden, he got overwhelmed by people who wanted to donate the collection. And as much as I understand, he was quite generously accepting collections. And it will be now entering a new stage where the museum is much more professional, where the collection is also much more professional maintained, where you have this restoration atelier, and just finding a focus on how to go on. Anyway, it's probably not possible just to say we focus on Swiss developments, although that this is a very nice thing, but I mean, the computer world has been dominated by a number of big American names, and they just have been all over the place in Switzerland. So my feeling is that will be one of the big tasks, to define a strategy for collection once the new museum and the new collection will be made public and available to everybody.
Well, I mean, as for what to collect and what not to collect, I mean, my project has this maybe unfair advantage towards the other projects that are present here, that it's a purely virtual archive. Well, it's not purely virtual. I mean, some people, they send me scans. Some people send me the real documents, which I have to scan, or my student assistant has to scan. And sometimes I have to send them back. Sometimes I'm allowed to keep them. So there is a shelf in my university office with some of these documents. But in the end, like, I mean, what we really store and exhibit, it's digital, it's virtual. So I do not have to spend that much of a thought on like whether there is room for like one more flyer or one more letter, unlike a museum that has to decide whether we take on this computer or not. I mean, the project is specialized in a way that what I do preserve is it has to be related with subcultural or alternative usage of home computers. So, such as, I don't know, documents related to hackers, to crackers, to demosceners, in a way maybe like to some gaming cultures. But just to give you a concrete example, a simple paper game manual, like I would not scan it and preserve it, not only for the copyright, due to the copyright issues, but also due to the fact that you can find it somewhere else as well. But if the game manual has some handwritten notes by some cracker who tried to crack the game, for example, then it's another matter, of course. What the project is limited by, of course, is the workload. So basically, this is a one-man project. Like there were some volunteers helping out at some point or another, but no one really stick to the project. And I mean, at some points, I had the privilege to be able to employ a student assistant who helped me with the scanning. Now it's the case again, so it will go forward a bit more. So there are still like couple of gigabytes of unprocessed scans that have to be like cataloged, and metadata has to be added. And the point is also, like, if you want to, let's say you have some correspondence between like two computer freaks, and you need to find out from when this is. I mean, more often they didn't put dates on the letters, not even years. So sometimes you have to research about the games that are mentioned in the letters to at least be able to say, okay, this letter must be, I don't know, after April 1987. Or if some cracked versions of the games are mentioned, then you can look up in the databases when this particular crack was released by a particular group. So it's a bit of a detective work. And I mean, this is what limits this project a bit. Yeah.
So, Stéphane.
Okay, so the first thing that is important to understand about the OCCC is that the OCCC itself doesn't have any material. It doesn't own any material. Instead, this is each member that owns his own collection. Therefore, we can have many, many different strategies because we have members that are focused on something else. For example, we have one member that is really interested into PlayStation 2, but only that. But you can cope that he has everything that rely on this platform. You can ask him anything, it will tell you. Another example is Marcel Prizy, that is with me here. His main approach is everything that touches Unix system. He's very well talented on such system. He can install SGI, he can install everything that you want. And this is something where I'm not so profi. I am personally more an Amiga fan, so I am collecting more Amiga stuff. But I must say that in overall, we have a big conception about what we want to do to display. Because what interests us is, after all, the history of computing. So we try to have everything that is relevant from an historical way. I mean, every machine that is well-known, like Commodore, Atari, but every machine that come on the market before, like the Sol-20. And we are focused on other marks that are not so well-known. Maybe the SMACI, because this is something that we like to, like the Musée Bolo. We like to preserve the system. But we are active on other things like maybe Japanese computer. This is a totally other market that is not so well known in Europe. We have many machines from this market, and we have many things from Russia, ex-USSR. This is very something specific that you have to learn to preserve. And I think your main force is that we have so many members with so many different goals that we can provide almost everything that you want. That means if someone come to us and ask, hey, we want to make an exposition about, I don't know, about sportive events, or we have to make a school project, there is a good chance that we can find something in our collection, in our members that fits the needs. Well, this is it.
Yeah, thanks. So you have the impression it's very diverse, very structured versus less structured, driven by people, what they're interested in or personal interests. So as you see, that's very also diverse in here. What I want to go on the next question, if you look at the Vintage Computer Festival, we actually celebrate these old computers. And one part which is important on those computers, those are tools that we interact with. So it's very important that the people not just look at them and say, like, it's in a cage, I can look at them, that they interact with them, they play with them, they use those stuff. Now I ask for your museums, how do you do that you guarantee that we not just look at the object, but we also can access them? And what do you mean by access? What it is important for you? What should they be able to do? Like,
okay, I begin. So, the first thing is that our main goal, like I said in the presentation, is to make this event, the OCCF, once a year. And we did this because we wanted to show our computers to other people. The main discussion for about 5 years when we curated the OCCC was that we have many computers, but they are stored somewhere and we don't use them. So the fact that we give us a goal with a date and a theme for the exposition, well, then we have no choice to take this computer from the storage, make them work, make them available to the public, and to preserve the software. And this is the way we have to go forwards. And this is the first thing. The second thing is that we have, we want to provide computers not only in a display way, but in a working state. I take a simple example. If you take two computers, the LISA and the Tandy TRS-3, when you look at them, you have one that is gray and the second that is another color, but you can tell the difference if you don't know the difference between the two computers, if you are not a collector. But suddenly, if you fire them and make the operating system running on them, then you see that one is a simple DOS and the other one is one of the first graphical system available to the public. And this makes a big difference. Therefore, we think that it's very important that make the system available to the public in a way that they can try them and understand them what it means to be able to use them, what it was at those time to use those computers. And yeah, this is a little bit what we do.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on his view?
Well, I think, we have a problem, but everybody has, which is the competence. The competence to fix and repair all stuff is not available to the major part of the new generations, and also of more of a competence. We don't also have pieces, the spares. So what we shall do? We must be creative. We shall create. I think Stéphane showed the case of a soul. No, you did it. It was something creative. We have to be creative. We have to have competence, and we need to have a generational change. We must teach new generations how it worked. Otherwise, we will lose the possibility to let and maintain available to the public those computers. It's very important to have this generational change, and we are very happy to have a lot of members which are 20 or 30 years old, not like me, sadly. Because, I will give you soon. Because, without the young people, we will lose our past.
I also see a danger that we get very much sort of hypnotic focused on old computers, and it's just inevitable a time coming where we just cannot switch them on and off anymore. And the question is, why are we interested in old computers? Is it just because it's the magic of the DOS prompt, or why do we do this? And then I think we have to discuss about conceptual approaches, such as we use emulation. We would like to introduce young people into the world of very simple, of a DOS or of a first Windows system or of a Cray machine, and just to simulate and to give them an idea what their horizon in that time was. And I think this conceptual approach is very important. The objects are important, of course, but we should not stop. We should not stop at the magic of the objects, because they at some point they become a fetish.
Somebody wants to reply on that one? Cédric?
So I think it's really difficult to put in hands working computers of collection, because as museum we need to preserve the object, and these objects are really difficult to preserve for long term, because this is plastic. This is there is metallic parts. This is more or less okay. There is chemicals with acids, battery, and things like that. So it's really difficult to preserve, to maintain alive. And there is the grease on the finger. Depending on the plastic, you broke the plastic when you touch the computer. So it's really difficult to put in hand a computer of a collection. You need to have maybe 10 of them. You decide to keep 2 to put them alive again, so that people can touch these computers. But they will be damaged after a certain time. And you should take care of that in the strategy to make computer available to people. So, and this is something that you need really a strategy when you do that, because using the computer will destroy it. That's the problem. The problem also is that without the computer, sometimes without the machines, it's nice. Emulators, there is people doing really nice things with emulators, emulating a lot of features, but there is some computer that are so hard to emulate because there is so much features that you will spend a lot of time to have exactly the same behavior. So it's not so easy. And emulators sometimes can replace the real machine, but not always. And that's why you need maybe sometimes to have alive computers to see what it is doing with the software, to make software alive. Because the software has been written, sometimes you have only the object code, not the source code. And you need to, if you want to see what it is doing, the easiest way is to run the code simply. And this is why you need also machines for research, for example, for researchers to try. If you think about Demoscene, the people from Demoscene use a lot of tricks inside the demo. Sometimes it's not possible to run the demo on, if you have a Commodore 64, depending on the model of the seed, you cannot run the demo. So you need really to select the right computer and so on to make the software running the same way as it was at the origin. So sometimes it's really difficult. And this difficulty is bigger when you give the computer to the young people that know nothing about phones, where you need to compose the number with the old phones. They don't know how to do. So you need to explain them how to do, even with old computers. Otherwise, they will take a look, say, okay, it's a computer, and go to the next one. And this is a bit, a pity, because they need to know about the history of the SS computer, the history of the people that make also the SS computers, because there is really nice history behind each object. And this is what we try to make at Musée Bolo. We have some piece we can show to the people so that they can touch the computer. We know that they will maybe destroy the keyboard. We will repair. That's life. But we have also some piece that we keep from in the collection in a clean, in a controlled way, so that we can preserve for the long term also. So we need both, I think.
I would like to respond to what Dominik just said, and also in addition to what you, Cédric, said. I mean, emulation is great, and I use emulation a lot, like in my everyday work as a computer historian. And so, I mean, to be honest, I have my Amiga and my C64 in the cupboard and haven't looked at them for years. But the problem is, if we rely only on emulation, and from a perspective of a cultural history, we fail to grasp many of the everyday practices of home computing. So, like on the emulator, maybe you can play the game, you can run the program, but you do not grasp, for example, how long it took to copy disks on a home computer. And this is really crucial, like if you research the cultural and social history of home computing. For example, for me it was really surprising to get to know from like memoirs and from oral history interviews what a social and sociable practice it was to copy disks. Like when kids went to their friend's house and copied disks, you could not do anything else on the computer. So there was a really lovely quote in a memoir I read where the guy said the most likable, the most popular person was not necessarily the one with the most games, but the one who was able to entertain his guests in his children's room while the discs were copying, because otherwise it would be a very boring affair for 10 minutes, 20 minutes and so on. And I mean, this is a crucial part of the user experience that you cannot get through emulator, because on the emulator there is no effort whatsoever to copy something, to load something. So, of course, if you're just interested in the technical side of things, then you can rely on emulation, but not if you are interested in the cultural history of computing.
Just one speed thing, and then
I discuss with each other.
Because another thing which is crucial for us is the feeling. The feeling. We right now have a real studio, a 90 music studio. Okay, it's the same. You can feel the same thing with an Atari playing music on different keyboards, drum machines, and whatever. It's a feeling that you can't have with an emulator, because the software, Cubase, is almost the same today. It's not a big difference, no? But the feeling is completely different. It's important to have a user experience. Like you told, this is something very, very, very important for us, and I think for everybody, and for the demo machine. And I give you the word for the demo machine. You know, I was part of, so I'm totally happy with your way to do, and it's very, very important, as you told, anything as it was. We swapped, okay, a game when we cracked it by modems at 2,400 baud, and we stayed at the phone for 1 hour and a half until I sent my file to my friend saying bullshits for 1 hour and a half. And that's an incredible part of the history that must be preserved, I think.
I like very much what you said about this copying as a social practice, and I think we might have to ask ourselves in future, do we just talk about preserving plastic, computer chips, light bulbs and so on, or do we talk about social practices? And I mean, it's just a sad fact that a lot of the pioneering generation, they will not be around in 20 or 30 years anymore. So I think we have also to be aware of the fact that this is also a theme, an issue of social history. We have to talk to them. Okay, it's nice to make a simulation of a disk copying process, but we will never be able to reproduce what it was for kids in the 70s or maybe in the 80s to come together for that. And therefore, what we need to do, we have to talk to the people. We have to do oral history projects. That's very important. And then we have to ask ourselves, when we do the oral history projects, what eventually are we going to do with these interviews? So I would just open up the horizon and say, let's talk in the future also more about social questions, about social practices, such as you suggested.
I just want to add something. I think that's, so for me first, an emulation is a very good tool, but it's more a tool. That means we can use the emulator to create something, we can use the emulator to test if software that are available on a real system run on the emulator itself, but for me it's only a tool. It will never replace a real machine. But this is only in the ideal world that is possible. For us, at the OCCC, we can afford to present real machine and make people use them with the real operating system on them, because we do once exhibition a year. We are not a museum with a computer that are displayed all the time. And this is clear. Once you have this dilemma, you can't simply put a valuable computer to everyone and expect that those will last more years. Then you have to find another solution. And I think that in some case, emulation can be involved in the way to explain people how the computer works, maybe with having the computer behind the windows, so you can touch them, you can destroy them. But I think it would be a mix of them. If you only display an emulator, then it's not possible that the visitor know what it's all about. Because you don't have the feeling, and feeling do everything. This is like you said, with floppy disk, with the wind that you have on your face, with the fan that blow hair when you turn on a Smaky 6. You have to feel this to understand what it was all about. An emulator can show you only a small part of it. But it's clear, sometimes you don't have another choice. I take a simple example. You have to take in account what machine we are talking about. If you take an Atari ST or an Amiga 500, it doesn't matter if you retro-write it and make it available to the public. Even if someone destroys it, it doesn't matter, because you have dozens of them behind the door to replace them. But you can do the same. You can't do the same with a Smaky 6 because we don't have enough of them. It is not possible. Yeah. So I see many possibilities and many goals. We have to adapt them. We have the luck nowadays to have the possibility to use some software emulation. I think that FPGA emulation as a simulation, it's not emulation, it's simulation, can be something very big in advance. And I see, after all, maybe we can do a SMACI once in FPGA to be able to run the operating system without using the real computer. It's something very, very interesting. But we just have to do it. That's the only one problem.
Stéphane, it's not so easy to make a FPGA functional. You know that Commodore 65 has an FPGA, as an emulator of Commodore 64, which is not functional after 8 years of development by Commodore. It's not so easy to make a perfect functional emulation. So anyway,
yeah, I don't want to go into discussion on the technology side. We try on the level side. I give you, Cédric, the word, then your final words, because we're already at 5 o'clock. Okay. And I wanted to quickly then close it down. Oh, I don't know why. We didn't figure out how this technology works. It has some feedback loop on some input field, which we don't know here in the room. So already with this basic technology, we're overwhelmed. Go.
Okay, so for me, collecting computers at Musée Bolo will continue because the collection we nearly every we receive two people that want to give us their computer per week, so it's a lot. And we have no more space. Well, we have a lot of a small space, but the space is missing sometimes. So, and we need to select simply what we want to collect. We try to show the computer alive from the beginning because it's interesting during event, because we decided that we need some people around the computer to explain the story, to explain how it works, to ask people not to destroy the keyboards and so on. And it's clear that running rare computers like Apple I, for example, would be complicated to put such kind of computer in hands of everybody, because it's simple computer, it's easy to emulate this one, but well, it's costly because there is not a lot alive in the world, for example. And this is a mythic computer, so he has changed the world. So this was the beginning of the clubs, of the people learning how to program computers because there is no software. So, and for the young generation, I think we need to create the same kind of spirit, like Professor Niku also did, creating a club with people interested in computers, in old computers, and that want to do something and learn them how to do things. Maybe this is the way to follow, to have the young generation that interested in computing, completely geek young people, and learn them how to repair computers. Simply, I think this is maybe a way to follow.
Thanks. So, Gleb, you wanted to do a statement, and then yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I will be fast. I mean, I just wanted to add a small thing to what has been discussed, like emulation versus real hardware, and like setting up like a period setting base, like you did with the music studio. But I think, and this is maybe something that we all have to be aware of, what we cannot recreate, like neither by emulation nor by exhibiting the original hardware in its original setting, is the feeling of users back then not knowing what will come next. I mean, if we look at this, for example, this music studio, on the one hand, like we can see, oh wow, this is how it was back then. But the musicians who sat in such a studio like 30 years ago, for them that was the limit. For them that was like the state of the art. They did not know what would come next, and maybe they didn't even expect that something will like advance even more. I mean, I remember how I used to call BBSs in the 90s, and I thought, okay, this will go on forever. Like I looked at some websites and thought like, okay, do I really need this? No, I get everything I need from the bulletin boards. And of course this changed within like 5 years time or so. But this sort of like horizon of the back then users, I think this is maybe the most hard thing to recreate if we collect and exhibit computer history. And also a tiny small appeal that I wanted to address in more detail, but I will just make it very short. At least from a historian's point of view, what we urgently need are more paper documents from the early era of home computing. I mean, I'm doing just a tiny part, like dealing with these computer subcultures. But to be honest, it's shocking that we have no institution except for the National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, that systematically collects business archives of computer game companies. Like if you want to do a business history or like any kind of history of computer games that would rely on, or that would be interested in how they were made and not just the games themselves, we have no material whatsoever. I mean, okay, the archive of Broderbund is preserved, the archive of Sierra Online is preserved, and perhaps like a dozen more computer game companies. But of the European computer game companies, there is nothing. I mean, look at Linel, for example, this really important Swiss game company of the 80s. Like, no one knows where their business papers are, whether there are any, and so on. I mean, this is maybe something that computer museums also, it would be great if they would also think about this aspect, like really collecting this stuff. And not just the machines. The machines are really, really important, of course, but we really need all these artifacts around the machines as well.
I see that you want to discuss a lot of time, but still I would like that people also have time to show the elements and they can discuss with it. Who wants to do you, Stefania, will follow up with the final statement or otherwise?
I totally agree.
Okay.
100%. And in fact, we have some original drawings, original schematics drawn by hand, by pencil, on the paper, of famous games, and the original source codes with all the comments of the original authors, and they just gave us to preserve and maintain, because the floppy disk, as every magnetic stuff, will die in the future. It's impossible to live forever, no? So we can duplicate it, we can copy it, we can do a lot of things and preserve it. And they gave us, and it's important what he said. I never thought about something oriented to preserve of video games history, but it's very important. And we have something, maybe should start something, sort of collaboration between all of us to maintain this kind of stuff, I think. Huh?
There is also one thing we need to keep in mind is the media. The magnetic media has not a long life. So we have, in the museum, we have a lot of drives to read this media. We need to keep them alive, to read and to save, to preserve what we can. So this is also something we are progressing at Musée Bolo, but this is an important subject to read the media we have. Yeah. And to have the competence and maybe to share the competences on some subject also, yeah, clearly.
So, yeah, I think all of you agree on that. That's also the basic idea, basically, about this collecting computer history panel, that you start discussing between each other, or that others from the audience, which are also collectors, sometimes I see from what I know, start discussing with you, and that we can actually do a follow-up in 2024, again, always at 4 o'clock, on talking between some exhibitors about some topics on collecting computer history. So thanks a lot. Use the time. You can discuss with them. They're downstairs, in front of Smacky, Atari. You also have a Smacky actually there, in a way, or here in the room, or Enigma in the room there over. So thanks a lot for joining the panel, and an applause for the panelists.